Hello, beautiful mummies, and welcome to another episode of the Real Mummy podcast. Before we dive into today's conversation, I want to give a sensitive content warning for all our listeners. In this episode, we will be discussing traumatic births, a profoundly emotional and potentially distressing topic. We understand that this conversation can be triggering and evoke strong emotions for some of our listeners. If you find this subject particularly difficult or you're not in a place where you can feel ready to engage with it, please take care of yourself and consider skipping this episode. We have many other episodes that might be more suitable for you right now, and we would love for you to join us next week. For those who choose to continue listening, please know that we approach this topic with great sensitivity and care. Our goal is to share these experiences to provide support, validation, and understanding to anyone who has been affected by a traumatic birth. If at any point you need additional resources or support, please visit our website at www.realmummypodcast.com, where we have compiled a list of helpful resources and contact information for professional assistance. Thank you for being here, and let's approach today's conversation with compassion, empathy, and respect for all the incredible mums listening today. Hi there, mummies, and welcome back to the Real Mummy podcast, the safe haven where real mums, real stories, and real motherhood experiences come together for powerful storytelling, hearty laughs, and plenty of tears. I'm your host, Lucy Dalton, and today we have a very special treat for you. We've all got our unique birth stories. Some are magical, some are dramatic, and some are downright roller coasters. In today's episode, we're diving deep into the raw and riveting journey of motherhood with our amazing guest, Maja. From emotional roller coasters to unexpected home births with no time for an epidural, Maja's story is filled with heart-stopping moments and ultimate triumphs. We'll be exploring everything from gym workouts up until 38 weeks to experiencing emotionally charged code blue situations and yes, even giving birth on the bathroom floor. Maja's incredible resilience and strength are truly inspiring, and you won't want to miss a single moment of her tale. So grab your coffee, find your cozy corner, and get ready to be captivated by Maja's unforgettable journey through two very different but equally extraordinary pregnancies and birth. It's honest, it's heartfelt, and it's absolutely real. Let's dive in. So thank you so much for coming on, Maja.
Thank you so much for having me, Lucy. I'm really excited.
So excited to be sharing your birth stories of your beautiful kids. So to start, can you just tell us a bit about yourself and about your gorgeous little family?
Yeah, sure. So I am Maja. I'm 35 and I have two beautiful children. I have a daughter. Her name's Evelyn. We call her Evie, and she is 5. And I have a son who's a year and a half. His name's Lincoln, and we call him Link. And yeah, we're just a little family.
Gorgeous. So another mum of 2. So
yes, of course, of course. You've got the 2 girls, don't you?
2 girls, yeah, 3 and 5. So it's funny when you start talking about birth stories, it's like, it feels like it was like yesterday. You know, as soon as you start thinking about it, I was like, oh my God, it literally feels like yesterday. All these things.
Absolutely. All those moments and all those feelings start rushing back. And as soon as other people start explaining their pregnancies or birth stories, you just feel straight away back there.
It is. And I feel like it's a rite of passage as a mum. You know, as soon as you sit down and mum's had a baby and you're like, right, tell me your birth story. It's just what we do.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that we're all really interested in everyone's experience because they do vary so much.
And that's what I love. I love with the podcast, I want to share all the different kind of birthing stories because at the end of the day, there's no one perfect birth and everyone has different births. And like some mum might think, well, that was perfect. And others will look and say, well, no. And that's why it's nice to share. And if you've had a traumatic birth, other mums might be able to listen about, wow, that happened to someone else. And you can kind of bond through that. And yeah, because it's a huge thing. And it's like women are doing it every day, but it's the most magical experience. So I'm so excited for you to share your beautiful pregnancies and births with your 2 kids.
So yeah, I tell you what, I only had them 3.5 years apart, but they were so different in every aspect. Starting with the pregnancies, my daughter and son's pregnancy could not have been more different. And to this, I guess we just don't know why the body does what it does.
Yeah.
I was, well, when I was pregnant with my daughter, I was very fortunate, I guess, to not have experienced morning sickness. I mean, I had the fatigue and all that, but I was still at the gym until I was 38 weeks, and I didn't have to modify a lot. Obviously, there were no burpees on that really happening, but I was. And a lot of the coaches were like, just please stop doing any major core work. But for the majority of it, I was able to slightly modify, but be able to maintain it. And I was doing functional fitness training at the time as well, up until I was 38 weeks. And funnily enough, one of the lead trainers at the gym had told me, you watch, you'll stop, and a week later you'll pop. And almost to the hour I did. It was just incredible. He called it and with my son, I was sick from the moment that stick had a double line. Like, honestly, it was a world of difference. And I guess it really started from the moment I found out I was pregnant, because I was feeling really unwell and I could not figure out what was going on. It was Mother's Day. I was like, did we have bad food? Like, what's happening? And then it was hours later and I just went, oh, hang on a second. Took a test, and lo and behold.
And especially because you had a toddler while you were pregnant with the sickness.
Absolutely. Like it was more than nausea. It was, I actually didn't really actually have the experience of vomiting around it, but it was just a 24/7 nausea, vertigo, fog. It was a bizarre experience, and it was the whole day. And I think my daughter would go to bed at 7 and I would join her. I was absolutely exhausted.
And did it last the whole way?
The majority of the time.
Oh my gosh.
Funnily enough, I started feeling some relief about the 8th month.
Yeah.
And by that time I was huge and I was swollen, but I actually felt amazing because I was no longer nauseous.
And that's the thing, it's the little wins. I feel like sometimes with the nausea, it's almost worse, because it's like sometimes you just want to make yourself sick and then it's like you feel better just after it.
Yep. I did consider, I was like, I wonder if I was actually sick, if I might have some relief.
Yeah.
And, I was on, meds and stuff, and it just didn't help a lot. So in the end, I decided not to continue with them because I'm like, look, it's not giving me relief.
Yeah.
It's just what it's going to be. And it was really hard, especially, like I said, running around with another child. That is an experience, and working in amongst all that as well. So it was really quite a lot. But to be fair, like, I have really great people in my life. My partner's really supportive and was there the entire time, just really picking up the majority of the slack throughout the entire thing. But yeah, it was a very different experiences, funnily enough.
That's crazy, isn't it? Like, I still can't believe you're in the gym till 38 weeks. I always see women in the gym and I'm like, oh my God. Like,
and that was literally one pregnancy. That was that. And then with my son, I don't think I barely managed walking. Like, it was just, it's such a different experience. And I guess, you kind of think some women go through a pregnancy potentially in the early 20s or their late teens, and then they might have another child later in life. And I guess, had the assumption that pregnancies in different decades potentially might have a different experience because our bodies are a whole decade older. But, having only a 3.5-year gap and have such a big difference, it really shows that it's not an age thing. It's just who knows? It's just pregnancy, isn't it?
It's crazy. But I suppose it's like the babies start, when you're pregnant. Like, my pregnancies were the same. They were similar, but, my second pregnancy was harder. Like, I was actually had vomiting with sickness, whereas my first, I was just nauseous. But my second, I was actually vomiting. And I remember feeding, because I only had 1 year and 11 months between my girls. So so I had a 1-year-old and I'm there feeding her lunch in the high chair, and I was like, oh God, I'm going to be sick. And I'm running into the kitchen sink, being sick, and then running back. And then, so different second time around when you have a toddler.
Oh, absolutely. And especially with such a small gap, you'd still be potentially experiencing sleeplessness and all of that.
She was a surprise baby, my youngest one. That's another story.
Yes. Gotta love the surprise babies. I have a sister who's 13 years younger.
Yeah. Oh,
And same mum and dad. So I was just shy of 14 when she was born. And yeah, she was definitely a surprise.
oh my God. Yeah. No, hubby's, yeah, shop is shut now, so there'll be no more surprise babies. We made sure of that. So one was surprise as well. Oh. So your pregnancies were obviously so different. How were your labour and your births? So do you want to start with your first?
Absolutely. So with Evie, I actually, funnily enough, had I was 38 and 3, so 38 weeks, 3 days along, and I had an obstetrician appointment in the afternoon. I was off work at that time, and so my husband and I went into the appointment the appointment was about 2 p.m. and I was feeling a little. I couldn't even explain. I just felt a bit funny, like since about midday. So it hadn't been long, and I thought, whatever. Went into the doctor, went in to see our obstetrician, and I just explained the last few hours I've been feeling a bit funny. So he checked my blood pressure, and I can't remember if it was low or high, and he's going, oh. And I said, I'm just at this moment, I'm feeling that funniness. And then it went away, and he checked it again, and then it was all back to normal. And so he's like, look, this could go on for weeks, who knows? He goes, but you just cannot give birth tonight. It's the only night I'm not available.
Of course.
Function. We have 4 boys. Mm-hmm. It's the only night I cannot be available. Do not give birth tonight. I went home afterwards and things just started escalating, and I was texting with my husband and he's going, should I come home from work? I'm like, nah, I'm fine. So I got in the bathtub, and that's where he found me at 5:30 in the afternoon when he came home. So just a few hours later, and at that point, I wasn't speaking a lot. I was just in the zone, and he said, oh, okay, it's happening. So at that point, I think I continued my merry way in the bath and just really, it all just really happened quite quickly. And I just went from I'm okay to not really being able to communicate a lot, just really being focused and in the zone. And so my husband was just busily trying to, get things ready and prepared. And I think it was about 7 o'clock when I could finally articulate, let's go to the hospital kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so we head to the hospital and they check how far along I am. And at that point, I was about 4 centimeters.
Wow.
So they're like, yep. You're in labor, check you in kind of thing. Let's go on through. Really in the zone. My parents live an hour and a half away. So, husband's run and gone, okay, it's happening. They're heading on down. It's about 7:30 at night at this point. And kind of for the next hour and a half or so, we went ahead and we were in the room and we were just mixing around between the ball and the shower, and there was no option for laboring in the bath in the suite that we were in, but there was a shower, and they kept coming in, you're doing a good job, etc. And at a point, I think that they must have offered me an control or morphine or something, and I've said yes, kind of didn't have a plan.
Yeah.
Say part of my planning for labor, I really did treat it almost like training at the gym. I did nothing but watch birthing videos and I was not set on any particular birth plan. My preference would have been as minimal intervention as possible, a natural labor, but I was open to whatever needed to occur. My preference wouldn't have been the a C-section or anything.
Just open-minded for however the situation was going to go.
And so the videos that I watched were quite varied in an essence, I guess, just kind of exposing to whatever I could.
Yeah.
What other options I could imagine. And so then they're like, okay, we'll get an epidural prepared, but we just need to see how far along you were. And they checked me and I was about 6 centimeters. And they're like, oh, it'll be about an hour or so. And about 30 minutes later, I started really having some experiences. And at that point, I was able to again come out of my little zone and say to my husband, they need to come back and check me.
Yeah.
And he said, they were just here half an hour ago. And I said, no, they need to come back and check me. And she came back in very much like, okay, I'll check you out. And I'd gone from six to 10 centimeters in 30 minutes.
Far out. After having the insurance.
Without anything, there was no time for anything. She came back in completely thinking I'd lost my mind.
Yeah.
And I was like, you have to check me now. And I've gone from 6 to 10. So what they say is that that's a really fast active labor, I guess.
Okay.
So I dilated so fast that my body just started to freak out over that.
Yeah.
So at that point, they're going, right, we're no time for anything. We're about to have a baby.
Yeah.
Which was cool. But at that point, we started having people come on in, and they had me in a few different positions. At that point, I was sort of on my side, and Evie's heart rate started to drop. And so they decided to flip me. And at that point, I guess the cord must have wrapped around her neck because she just went into complete immediate distress. And they had to call a code, what they call a code blue. So it's an emergent situation. And we had, gosh, I think we ended up with about 20 odd people in the room, mixing from nurses to doctors to administrative staff. The one thing we didn't have was an obstetrician in the room. I couldn't find one, which was really scary.
Yeah.
So at that point, you know, the main midwife of the room, I guess, like she just spoke my language. She was like the best gym coach ever. Like it was just right on my level. And Jace, and I do recall at a point she shifted in tone of the room, and she just turned around and said to the main floor nursing administrator, I guess, if we can't have an obstetrician in the next 5 minutes, I'm delivering this baby, because I guess things were just becoming far too emergent, and they couldn't locate the OB that was at the hospital that night. So eventually the OB did come in the room. So we had obstetrician, pediatrician, everyone was there, came in, and it was just about getting her out as quickly as possible. So the experience I had with that was a episiotomy and forceps. So we had both happen.
Yeah.
To be honest, I look back and I can't really remember much of that component. I don't know what it was about, but nonetheless, she came out screaming, which is great. But my one thing that I wanted was to make sure that I had that skin to skin, and I did get that, because though she was in distress, she came out great color, really vocal. I got her for a little bit before they did have to take her away, just given the situation, and they not out of the room, but just next to me. But she came out perfectly healthy, but unexpectedly small. They kind of measured her to be about like a 3.2 to 3.3, you know, before engagement. She was 2.5.
Wow. Was that the growth scans where they kind of roughly said about 3.2, 3.3? Do you know what? They said the same for me. I had regular growth scans for both my girls. And so the first time they told me I was going to have a small baby, which I kind of did. And then the second time they were like, oh, this one's going to be a big baby. And she kept saying I was going to be a big baby. And I was expecting it. And she was literally, both my girls were bang on 3 kilos. And I was like, it's not big, not small. It's just, you know, but I was like, and I've heard so many times where women are having an ultrasound and then they get freaked out. They think they're going to have this big baby. And then they're like, oh, you know, I'm glad we didn't intervene too much.
Absolutely. The friend that I mentioned that I have at the gym at the minute, she had been told that she's measuring on the largest side. And I guess I kind of shared my experience, look, these growth scans are really estimates, to the point where they estimated an additional 700 to 800 grams, which is huge for a newborn baby, that difference. But she came out 2.5, so that sits at third centile. And she was small but feisty, and there's nothing wrong with her. However, it did not stop ranges of doctors testing her, everything they could possibly imagine, because she was so unexpectedly small. But the one person that wasn't stressed was my obstetrician, who I saw the next day come into the room and said, I told you not tonight. I was like, well, that's your fault. You jinxed me.
I was going to say, as soon as he said that, I was like, Murphy's Law. As soon as he says that, what does he expect?
Exactly right. No, so she followed her growth curve, and she's completely like she's more but feisty.
But that's what you want. You want the feisty ones when they come out like that. But that's the thing. Like as scary as that would have been, having all those people in the room. Because I've seen the other side of that. I'm a nurse, so I'm in the codes. So I see the other side of that, and I know how like the room. There's every single person in there. When it's just it would be so daunting. And then when you're giving birth, which is the most vulnerable experience, like that is just, I can't even imagine how that would have felt.
It was definitely a lot. I guess I had the benefit of being a little bit preoccupied.
Yes.
During the whole experience, but definitely my husband, he reflects on it, and we do see it still as this amazing experience. There's nothing that we've walked away thinking, oh my gosh, but it was definitely an experience. And, having it here, he just felt really used in this corner of the room, and he just kept getting thrown these instructions and these like, oh, this was what about to happen, this is what's going on. They just had to take control, which was great. Like, we're in the perfect place for a situation like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely a scary one, especially just not being able to find an obstetrician, and the whole lot. And then the days preceding, just making sure that she was fine, and she was. So that was good.
She was ready to come out.
That's right. And then with my son, that was yet another whole experience. So as I mentioned, we'd gone through this really tough pregnancy, but at the end, I felt awesome because I wasn't nauseous and I wasn't dizzy, and it was great. And I was kind of like, I guess I had that 38 and 3 in my mind, like around the time. And then that day was approaching, and then the day passed, and I'm going, okay, where now I really have no idea what to base it off. This never happens. And we had gone, it was early January, so we'd gone to the beach that day, and I walked up and down there's a huge staircase up and down the beach. So I've gone up and down that a couple of times, thinking, when I get these things happening.
Yep, get stuff moving.
I'm 39 weeks, 2 days. So still plenty of time to go, but I thought we'll just see what happens.
Yeah.
And Evie had gone to sleep that night, and I decided I was gonna take care of business. I washed my hair.
Yeah.
I shaved. I gave myself a facial. I plucked my eyebrow. Like, I did everything.
Yeah.
I clipped my nails. I did the whole lot. I was exhausted. Exhausted. And I think it was about 9:30 at night, and I came out to my husband. I said, right, I'm prepped, ready. Whenever this baby comes now, I'm prepared.
Yeah.
And so I went to bed, and I woke up 3 hours later, and I started feeling the feelings, and I was like, oh, wonder what. So I just had the urge to get up and get on my Fitball. And there's one thing about me: when I'm pregnant, I live on a Fitball.
Oh my! I just went with me everywhere. Yeah. I was just bouncing. Even when Maisie's a bad newborn, she would bounce her on a bit. Oh, there's something about a Fitball. Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely. At work, at home, all things just bounce and roll, and just there's something so comforting about a Fitball.
Oh, so good.
I got up and started bouncing around, and about 2 o'clock, I disturbed my husband enough for him to go, oh, what's going on? And I just kind of said to him, I don't know, like, I feel a bit funny. Go sleep in the back room. So that way, because we had Evie at this point, and I was like, I need you rested. I'm okay. I can still speak. I'm okay. You go sleep in the back room. I'll just continue to do my thing here.
Yeah.
So at this point, I guess because of Evie's birth, I was really keen on as minimal intervention as possible. I kind of felt like, I get that she was in distress and such, but I kind of felt like I had the capacity. Had I not been told to lay on a bed, had I not been, told to, flip around here, there and everywhere, I kind of just wanted to see what I was capable of. So I really wanted to stay home as long as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had borrowed a TENS machine from a midwife friend of mine. And so I sort of mixed between the shower and the bath and playing around with the TENS machine a little bit. And I think it got to about 5:30 in the morning. So I'd been awake now for about 4 hours. And I was like, okay, I better get my husband up. Edie's going to be up soon. I think that this is probably labor, but I was still I was
What was your pain out of 10, like, at that point? Was it like...
I guess it was still manageable. It was still 3, and I was still speaking. I was able to think, so I thought to myself, this is really early stages.
Yeah.
So got him up, and it was actually a really lovely experience, because at that point I had Evie come into the room, and she was like rubbing my back, and she's like, "Mummy, you okay?" And we're explaining the baby's coming, and so it was a really lovely experience.
Yeah.
And started to escalate a little bit, and so our plan was to have my mum come down to watch Evie. So, and she was, as I said, an hour and a half away. So by about 6:30, kind of texting, saying, "Okay, might want to come on down." So she's like, "Cool, I'm up. I'll get ready and I'll come." And I guess I went to the same obstetrician, and he said to me, "It seems you labour quick. As soon as when you really start feeling serious, you need to go to the hospital."
Yeah.
And that in my mind, while still thinking, I really want to stay at home as long as I possibly can. So my age would just continue to be, if I can talk and think, I'm not ready to go.
Yeah.
So TENS machine, ball, shower, bath. At a point, I think it was about 7, 7:15, my husband started to get nervous, and he's like, "I think we need to go to the hospital." Like, "Look, as soon as one comes, we'll sort that." So I was in the bath, and I think I felt my water pop, like in the bath, and I'm going, "I think my water broke." And, my husband's looking, he's like, "The water's clear. Like, I don't know what to expect, but there's nothing there." So he's like, "It probably didn't."
Yeah.
And so I didn't. And things progressed very quickly from there. Mum arrived. It was about 7:45, and my husband's like, "I've had enough. We're getting in the car." Like, we had to go. So, we just, at that point, been fed ball water, TENS machine. He'd been applying, which I can recommend to anyone, the pressure on the hips. That was a game changer.
Oh, so how did you do that? Just like press down on your hips?
Absolutely, with such force, mixed in with the TENS machine. I don't know, my midwife friend was telling me about it, and I'd done a bit of research about it, and you just really apply into your hip joints and above them, and sort of also like in the either side of your spine, like just above your glutes.
Yeah.
And there's something about that really helps relieve the pressure of the birth, I guess.
Yeah.
And it was so funny. At a point in the bath, doesn't even make sense, but I swear I actually felt him almost turn a corner. And I was talking to my friend about that, and she was saying, "Well, that's the thing. Like, they come around and then bodies turn around at their indoor."
Yeah.
But I guess the difference was, in comparison to Evie, like, I was just so in tune with what was happening. Like, I actually felt him almost turn a corner. And so my husband loaded me up in the car, and finally got me in the car, and I sat down, and I looked at him, and I went, "Nope." And I ran back inside. And he's going, "What's going on?" And my mum's going, "Can you guys just get in the car?" And he's like, "She's run to the bathroom." So gone back into the bathroom, and I just got on the floor. I said, "I'm not going anywhere."
Because you felt, did you feel like he was coming?
I was like, "You need to get towels. You need to call an ambulance." And he's like, best person to have in a pressure-filled situation, by the way. Super calm. He's like, "No worries. You just chill here."
I'm so lucky.
Oh, so lucky. Mum, in the meantime, is in the back of the house, in the back guest room with Evie at like 8:00 in the morning, trying to turn up music.
Yeah.
Evie's like, "Can I have a snack?" And Mum's like, "Mum's have all the things." And I guess at this point, I started becoming vocal and, going through the labour.
As you do,
Evie was going, "Is that Mum? What's wrong with Mum?" And my mum's like, "Better turn it up louder." So my husband was on the phone with the ambulance dispatch, and they actually released 2 ambulances trying to get someone here on time, and instructed sort of, "Can you see anything, etc. Like, let's get her ready to give birth." So then we were on the bathroom floor, set up in towels and mats and blankets and such. And they wanted me to flip onto my back. And I was like, nope, not doing that. So I did birth sort of like on an all-four situation.
Yeah.
And while Jace was on the phone with them listening to instructions, the paramedics didn't arrive in time, and I gave birth to my son there on the bathroom floor. So luckily they arrived a few minutes later. But yeah, he arrived.
And how does that happen though? I'm trying to visualize it. So you're on all fours. Like, did your husband catch him as you came out, or did you kind of like, how did that work? 'Cause you hear these stories, but I'm like, how does that actually happen? Like the logistics around that.
It was really bizarre because I kind of like I pushed out his head, and there was a moment of calm.
Yeah.
And I can't. There's called something that moment, but I can't recall what it's called. But I just remember there being this build up, and then I pushed his head out, and Jace was like, "Okay, his head's here," and it was almost like this quiet moment where I think a good 2 minutes went by, where we just were like that and still, and he was obviously still. I guess they still feel like they're in the womb. Their whole body hasn't been birthed as yet. And everything was just quiet and still until it wasn't. And then the next surge came and I pushed him out. So I was still on all fours. My husband was able to grab him. And the cord was really short. It must have been wrapped or whatever. So I wasn't able to flip over. But luckily within a few minutes, paramedics were at the door. Door was unlocked. They let themselves in and were able to sort of remain in that position to sort of allow the delayed cord clamping situation, and then I was able to flip over. But he was great. He was loud and in charge, so he was absolutely fine.
Oh my gosh! Oh my, really got goosebumps. That is just like far out. And then, did you manage to stay home? What kind of happened after that?
So after that, the paramedics were just amazing. Honestly, such respect for them. They were just like, "Look, you're fine, baby's fine. Let's just stay here. Are you breastfeeding?" Which I was. So they allowed me to just stay there, comfortable, trying to breastfeed, which will bring on the placenta.
Yeah.
And we were there for about 20 minutes, and nothing was happening. And they're like, "Look, we're going to pack you up, take you to the hospital. They'll be able to sort you out really quickly."
Yeah.
And I felt, I don't know how, I was tired. I was, on cloud nine, but I was tired. Got in the ambulance, went to the hospital, talking, everything was fine. They'd already notified the hospital that I was BBA, birth before arrival.
Yeah.
Which apparently happens a lot in the cup.
Yes, I've actually heard of two mums that's happened to. Yeah.
What was that, sorry?
I've known two mums that's happened to in the back seat of the car at the hospital.
And apparently that's the most common spot that a BBA happens. So got to hospital and Link was fine. He was great.
Yeah.
He was cool. I was really happy. Everything was really chill. And just said bye to the paramedics. They rolled me into the hospital room, I guess, where they were just going to... I think they inject you with something to help bring on the placenta.
Yes.
Yeah. So they rolled me in and they're like, "How you doing? Do you need anything?" And I looked up at this woman and I had little naked Link on my chest, and I just said, "I just feel really nauseous, almost maybe thirsty and a bit dizzy." And Jay, my husband and I, we talked about this moment. She looked down at me and she looked at my husband. She looked down at me and she goes to him, "I'm going to give you your son. I'm going to need you to sit in that chair in the corner of the room. I'm going to have to call a code blue. There's going to be a lot of people in this room.
Another
It's
one.
going to be scary, but she's going to be okay." And I was present for this moment. And I'm like, "I'm just a bit dizzy. Like, I'm okay. What are you talking about?" And my husband was like, "What?" And then within a split second, Link's getting thrown to him. He's getting thrown into the corner. And I'm hemorrhaging. So, yeah, it turns out that the placenta had torn apart and caused hemorrhaging internally, and I had no idea until I did. And at that point, I had, again, like a dozen people in the room, multiple people on either side of me, literally trying to get, like, given link, told to sit in the corner, and code blue began, and it all happened very quickly. And I'm sure it was only the span of a few minutes, but I guess the person that was most impacted was my husband at this point. But we had about a dozen people come into the room, and I was just wheeled into sort of the bed section of the room. And I just recall having multiple people either side of me starting to just try and save my life, basically. They were injecting me with gosh knows what, trying to input cannulas into me. Veins kept collapsing. It was just, you know, a hemorrhage, they reckon, postpartum hemorrhage, I think.
Yes, yes.
They say that it's once they get control of it, everyone's safe, but it's a pretty serious situation while it's happening until they can get control. And we just look back and thank goodness that it happened. When I got to hospital, it was almost instantly. They rolled me into the room and it all went down. It was like it was holding on just until I was where I needed to be. And I just remember thinking to myself, I've just gone through birth. No drugs, no nothing.
Yep.
At home.
Yeah.
And this moment here is the most painful thing I've ever gone through in my life. And my husband says the same thing. He just remembers sitting in the corner on this room with his, and he just says, you know, my naked newborn son, thinking, I may be a single dad.
Yeah.
I'd admit it now.
Oh.
And he goes, he said, I just watched you give birth at home with nothing but you and I and some towels on the floor. He goes, but I've never heard a human being make sounds the way that you did at that moment.
Yeah.
And it was just super intense. And again, it may have only been a few minutes, but it was just, I guess, one of those moments that you think life could have changed very quickly.
Yeah.
Right then and there, had we not been in the right place at the right time with those right people. And so they just had to push on my stomach to try to expel things and just kept injecting me with gosh knows what. And I think in total I lost a couple liters of blood, a liter and a half of blood. I can't even recall the numbers now, but I lost quite a bit of blood in the process, as you'd imagine.
Yeah.
And yeah, luckily they were able to obviously get everything under control and things were able to sort of calm down quite a bit after that. I honestly just in that moment remember just like, I don't even know my son, like just, this is not the time to be taking me. It's not the time. And luckily it wasn't the time, obviously. But it was really, it was a really big experience. It was quite impactful, obviously, in our lives and definitely for my husband, because I think I was 8 weeks old when he ran for a vasectomy, because after I was explained that after that experience, I would very much be considered high risk.
Yes.
Because the good potential that could happen again. And so those were the birth experiences. And my OB came in that afternoon and he said to me, you know, I got this text message that said that one of my patients gave birth at home, that they were in BBA. And I had said to myself, but it's Maja. He goes, you are. I was like, you know, the real annoying thing is I've paid for twice now for a private obstetrician. You've been there.
Oh my God. So you didn't end up going down for like theatre or anything after you hemorrhaged, or?
Literally not. I did have some a tear, nothing too major, but enough that they had to sort of sew me up. And it was at that point, after 2 births, that I got to try the gas.
Oh, that stuff. After all of that.
All of these experiences, they're like, would you like some gas? I always stitch you up. I'm like, you know what? Sign me up.
You're like, I'm not doing this again. So that's probably my last time.
I'm going to make use of this one.
Oh my gosh. What? I can't believe that. Like, you think like if you were just 20 minutes later, you know, that's the human body is just extraordinary, but like far out, like.
It really is. Like, it all made sense now why the placenta wasn't coming out higher and why I was feeling a bit off afterwards. And just for it all to wait until that specific moment was just extraordinary.
Yeah.
And it was just meant to be, which is really lucky. It was an experience that neither of us would like to go through again.
Yeah.
It all worked out.
Yes.
The best that situation could have worked out, because it could have taken a very different turn.
And how brilliant in the midwives, though. They are just like, I have so much respect for midwives. They are just amazing women they just know, don't they? And then, yeah.
They do. I cannot even articulate the amount of respect I have for our midwives through both lots of pregnancies, through the births, through the recoveries. They are just incredible humans. And funnily enough, since having Evie, I've had this massive just love of pregnancy and birth.
Yeah.
Yes, the babies are amazing and I love the babies, but it's just that experience that, you know, that so many of us and some don't get to go through, that is just so wonderful, that I would love to in another life come back as a midwife. I may even train as one. It's just such an experience.
Oh, it is. And I've got a few episodes where I've spoken to midwives, and I've got one like where she talks about water births, and honestly, you can just see this passion and the love that she has. And yeah, it's beautiful. But it is, to me, like I'm the same. I had a traumatic birth second time around, but I still think birth is the most beautiful experience. And I'm like, it is. And like, we were the same. That's why hubby got a vasectomy, because he's like, I can't watch you go through that again. Like he was like, no more, you know. And that was, I think that's the thing for the husbands. It's hard for them if you've had a traumatic birth, because obviously it's horrible for the mums, but for the dads who are usually just standing and watching, like I've spoke to my hubby about it. He's like, I've never felt so useless and scared, you know, and everything is out of their hands and they're just watching. It's just, it'd be horrific.
Absolutely. I really do feel, and I think that that's another way that our generations are moving. They're really understanding the impact that birth, pregnancy and labour has on the men. With Evie, Jace went through a beer and bumps course.
Yes, I've heard of that.
It's so good. And there's just so much more understanding of the experiences that the guys go through. But I guess in the same light, like we are layered with all these wonderful hormones that protect us from having, I guess, experienced every little component of it. Well, they are not protected by all those, and they just are sitting there watching something that they can be a part of, but also feel helpless watching and experiencing. And so there's just a lot that they go through that, you know, hopefully we are moving as a society into understanding and really, really empathizing with a little bit more. They aren't the forgotten ones. They're a part of that journey.
100%. And I think that's the thing. I think it's to do with babies as well. Your body is made, you forget how bad things were, because, you know, it's evolution. We're made, you know, if women remember just how painful childbirth was, and, you know, the sleepless nights, like you really remember, women aren't going to do it again. And it's so funny. I remember someone asked that, my sister, and she was like, so what is the pain of childbirth? And I'm like, do you know what? I cannot describe it. And I remember my mum saying the same thing. I cannot describe it. But then I remember when I was going to labour my second time, I was like, that's it. But it's like, you know, but it's like you can't describe it. You physically, you know it's painful, but you can't describe it. And I was like, it's literally your body's way of making you forget. So you keep having more.
Absolutely. Like I look back at my pregnancy with my son, and it was debilitating. Like it was just for almost 9 months, I wasn't a functional human, I felt like. And every minute of that, I kept thinking, this is worth it, but I'm never doing this again. However, I tell you what, if my husband said to me, do you want me to reverse it and we go again? I'd probably be like, okay, why not?
This is the reason my husband has had it, because we always joke, I was like, I would just keep having babies to have babies, because I love the whole pregnancy, birth, babies. I do. But like we always said, we didn't want any more kids, you know, like, but I would just keep having babies, have babies. And that's why he's had a vasectomy, because it was down to me, my hormones. I'd be like, give me another one.
Legitimately our story as well. I can't get enough of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Even the parts that I swore I never wanted to experience again, even through 2 cone blues, and all of that jazz, unexpected home birth, a very intervention-filled hospital birth, and all the bits and pieces in between. In amongst that with my son, 6 weeks later, they found that I had retained a portion of my placenta.
Oh my gosh.
So I had to go back into hospital and go under general anesthetic and have all of that fixed up. And they say that because they were actually surprised that I was able to breastfeed my son, because often when you have retained placenta, because of your hormones almost consider you still pregnant, and people struggle with breastfeeding until they realize what's going on, and had been just over 6 weeks before they picked up on the fact. And that's just because I was still so unwell and you know, still had bleeding and it just wasn't getting better. That they went, oh, hang on, and they figured out what was happening. Fortunately enough, I was able to breastfeed in that window and was able to continue with it. But they say that you kind of almost restart your postpartum recovery process because your body has finally gotten rid of all the retained product, and then it starts to heal. But I kind of had assumed that, given I've lost so much blood, I didn't opt for the transfusion. They didn't recommend it because it was kind of on the verge of and they said, look, we'll give you an iron transfusion. You'll feel pretty cracky for the next couple of months, but it's less risky than a full blood transfusion.
Yeah.
So we opted that road. So I kind of had just written off that 6 weeks as this is because I lost so much blood. My body's trying to just equalize itself, but it turned out to be more. And I had no prior experience and knowledge to understand why I wasn't feeling better in that window until I had the surgery. And though it was like kickstarting recovery again, it did feel a lot more like a standard recovery than the first 6 weeks.
Yeah. It's actually crazy how common that is. I know a few friends that happened to, and one of my friends, and she's a nurse as well, and it was her first baby, and she had the retained placenta. And like, I remember going around to visit, and by this point, none of us had kids, you know, so she was standing up, and I remember standing up, and then she was like, oh, I've got to go. And she would just like a gush of blood would come out. And like, this was like 3 weeks after she had a baby. And we just kind of all assumed that like, oh, that's normal after you've had a baby. And she was like, it's almost the point I can't leave the house. And we were like, okay, you know, like we had no idea. And then by 6 weeks, same thing. She was feeling all those symptoms, feeling rubbish. And she was able to breastfeed as well. She was struggling, but she was able to do it. And then, when they saw she had retained placenta, and then she had to have a GA and everything. And then she said even that's hard with like breastfeeding with having a GA. And it's just, oh my God, that's just a whole other thing in itself. It's just, that's a big ordeal.
Definitely. And luckily, as you said, I was able to breastfeed before and after, but so many women struggle to kick off breastfeeding and just feel that their bodies weren't able to do it. And you know what? I'm all about pro-choice, but it's just sometimes there's that lag time, and then they go, oh, okay, well that's part of the reason why I had such struggles, and you know that they're able to sort of reconnect from there.
I think that's the thing as well. Like if you are able to, like I think that's the thing. It's like you were saying about pro-choice, but sometimes it's like, you know, if that choice is kind of taken away from you because of that, by 6 weeks you might have already grieved like, well, breastfeeding is not happening for me, and you've already down on the path. You know, it'd be hard then to turn around and actually, no, I'm going to start to breastfeed now.
Absolutely. Luckily, and you mentioned you've got a friend who's a lactation consultant. They are such wonderful ones, and I've met a couple of really lovely ones that helped me on my own breastfeeding journeys. And, you know, so again, one of those things that has shifted where there's such openness to talk about it and such assistance and support out there. And even the Breastfeeding Association, I remember a couple of weekend calls I rang them up just asking for some advice, and they were just such a useful support to have.
They're brilliant. And I was like, I feel like I didn't use them enough with my first, and it wasn't until I'd had a second, and I was like, I found out about like, you know, the breastfeeding hotline, which I honestly was calling every week. And then even with the second child, and then I use a lactation consultant, which is fantastic. And it's like I said, obviously I'm very privileged to have that here in Australia, but
Absolutely.
If you're here in Oz, use those. And the breastfeeding hotline is free. You know, there's fantastic midwives, lactation consultants there that can offer advice, you know, and it's just, use those resources.
They're so important to use. And as you said, it's so fortunate that we get to have that really at our fingertips here in Australia, because it's just not always the case, you know, in other countries. So it's a wonderful service to provide. And you know, I was calling them on weekends a few times. It's those moments you really need them, and sometimes that's not Monday and Friday 9 to 5.
Or in the middle of the night where your baby has refused the breast for 3 hours and you're like, what is happening? And your mind is going overdrive because you're tired.
Absolutely. It's from oversupply to undersupply to or everything in between. They're just a wealth of knowledge. And I remember receiving emails with resources as follow-up and things along those lines. So they were just absolutely awesome.
Definitely, definitely. So, yeah, no more babies on the cards for you then, Maya.
No, I definitely am filling my cup with friends around me that are having children.
Yeah.
I've definitely done with our own, and I think it's a good time to end it. My body definitely, it's nice to have my body back for me at this point, but I think much like you, if I was given the choice, probably just never start having babies. I know this is so wonderful. Oh, but definitely, we've got two wonderful, healthy children. Couldn't ask for more. We're very, very fortunate, and the postpartum experiences for both have been very, very good. I think that for me, I probably take that full year to come back to sort of feeling a bit more myself. And that's probably because I do breastfeed for a majority of that year. With Evie, we got to a year with leg to shine. And I think that once sort of that journey wraps up, having your body back is definitely something that is needed at a point. And as much as I would love to have another baby, it is nice to know that is back to being mine.
Do you know what? I think that's what I was most excited for as well when I decided, like, we're not having any more. And I was like, I'm looking forward, because when if you're pregnant and then breastfeeding and pregnant and then breastfeeding. And then I think I read somewhere it takes like 2 years for your hormones to level out after having a baby, especially if you start, you have them back to back and stuff. And then, so it's just crazy, like our bodies go through so much. And I was like, this is probably the most leveled out my hormones have been for years. And it's nice to be able to get my body back. And, so I know exactly how you feel. So it's kind of like, I'm trying to think of the perks now when I do get a bit of baby fever. I'm like, no.
Absolutely. It's so hard to know that you sort of, especially with the younger ones, experiencing those moments with your own children for the last time. I keep reminding myself that one day there'll be grandbabies. Or, friends with kids will happen. But yeah, it is nice. Much like you, sort of once those hormones level out and you sort of start to feel a bit more yourself, there's definitely those perks that happen. And I guess seeing each new stage, you miss the previous stage, but you also kind of like it gets a bit easier. Each little developmental leap they have, each moment gets just that little bit easier. The nights get the sleep gets a bit better, and not as much throwing food off the high chair. Now they eat it better.
I think that's the thing, you celebrate little win. I think with my girls, they're 3 and 5 now, and I've said to my hubby, I feel like we're out of the trenches now. Like, we don't have a cot anymore, we've kind of don't have high chairs, and we're kind of out of that. Like, we're getting rid of our pram, it's kind of, as sad as it is, like, I bawled my eyes out when I got rid of, like, took my cot down and stuff. As sad as that stage is, but then it's also like, okay, but then this next phase is so beautiful, like watching them become these little personalities. It's kind of, I think that's why you have to look at it as well. It's like, celebrating the next stage and all the beautiful parts of the next stage and watching them grow and their personalities, and it's very special.
Absolutely. We at least still 18 months old, so we still have the pride of the law. But I tell you what, having kids 3.5 years apart, I did find like there was definitely, it was all being a first-time parent going from 0 to 1 child is very jarring and life-changing. But I actually really did find the move from 1 to 2 probably even harder. And I think a part of that was the fact that we, our daughter was 3.5 when our son came along, and we'd packed up the high chair. The cot had been away for a long time. We hadn't seen the pram in years. It was a whole new world, bringing all that stuff out. And we had such a vast range of things. We had baby things. We had a bouncer, and we had prams, and all of that mixed in with craft tables and and scooters and bikes. And so there was just such a massive gap. And there is still, between these two children, that we really lived in two different worlds.
Yeah.
And you just kind of like, where's this contraction going to sit in the house?
I suppose that's true, because you would have had, things would have got so much easier by 3. And that's the thing, because like I said, Maisie was 1 year and 11 months. So she was still in a cot. She was still, in nappies, or she was still a baby, really. Like it was. So I think it took us probably at least 4 years solid until we got out of like a baby stage, like it was just like we were constantly in it. So it's kind of, and then I talked to other people who've had the 3 to 4 year age gaps, or then the people who've had the 2 under 2. And I think that's the thing, there's hardships in both. Like I said, for you guys, it would have been like, oh, this is great. And then going back to that, whereas I was kind of just in it, so I didn't really know. Like, it was just, I'm out of it quicker, but then it's like those 4 years are rough. Like,
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I definitely, there were moments where I thought this is why people have children close together, because similarly, we were out of nappies. There was full nights of sleep. I'd gotten used to having all night sleeps again.
Yeah.
We're able to communicate with this child. She understood what we were saying. Doesn't mean she listened all the time.
Yeah.
She understood what we were saying. And so going back to that and having these two in very different stages, we did find it really challenging. So I did at a point understand why people have them close together, because it kind of feels like a continuation. But I also can see how difficult that block of time would be, because we sort of had a bit of a breather and went back to it kind of thing. So I don't know. I think that there's no better, there's no worse. I think that it's all just the sort of that ride that everyone takes individually.
I just think it's just hard going from 1 to 2, personally. I just think that is, like, being a first-time mum was hard, but going from 1 to 2. So I'm sorry to my mums who are maybe about to have a second. I'm not like, I don't want to scare you, but for me personally, I found it harder going from 1 to 2.
I definitely felt the same. I think that a big part of it was about, you have this one child who envelops such a mass, everything, I remember being so concerned with how I didn't feel like there was enough love in me. I was like,
yes.
And I know that everyone says, and everyone kept telling me, you don't think there's enough love for another child to this level as you do with your first, but it doesn't split, it doesn't lessen. All of a sudden it multiplies. And I thought to myself, there's no way there's no way my body can cope with any more love than what I currently have. And when it happens, and it actually does, it's the most amazing experience. And it's definitely a challenge going from 1 to 2, because you feel like your focus is so split. But I see my children play with each other. And when Link was little, Evie would be desperate to give him a bottle or help change his nappy. She did desperately want to help in the little tags. And I remember I was breastfeeding him, and I think I was about 7 weeks. I had the surgery, and I was sort of a week post, and I was feeling great at that point. And I remember I was sitting on the bed breastfeeding Link, and the night before I'd set up this box, like this different activity box with things I could do with Edie while breastfeeding Link. And so there was one morning, everyone was dressed, teeth had been brushed, I brushed Evie's hair, I'd pulled out this box of toys, and I was breastfeeding Link while Evie and I were playing this Snakes and Ladders board game. I just had this moment, and I was like, okay, there's 7 weeks into being a mum of 2, and this is the first moment I feel like I've got myself together.
Yeah.
And that this is the new family dynamic, and it's actually awesome.
Yeah.
And I just remember being there, such a pivotal moment for me, knowing that not every moment's going to feel that way, and some moments I'm going to go, I can't split myself between these two children. I certainly have had a lot of those moments, but that was the first moment that I went, this is awesome. Like, this is life. This now feels like how life is meant to be.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. So I feel like, hopefully every mum that goes from 1 to 2 also gets to experience that moment, and hopefully it comes sooner rather than later, but there'll be a moment, this pivotal moment, that they'll just look around and go, okay, this actually feels like my normal life. It's not like I'm trying to get used to something new. Like, this is life.
And the older they get, the more kind of those moments happen. Like, to my girls now, the more that happens, they are like best friends. Don't get me wrong, they fight so much, but they are literally like best friends now. And it's just, it's so beautiful to watch that bond. And it's just beautiful knowing you're able to give them that sibling. And I feel so lucky that we were able to give Maisie a sister, like a sibling. And it's just, yeah, it's beautiful. It's hard work,
Oh, yeah.
but it's worth it. It's worth it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, well, thank you so much for coming on, Maya. I'm so happy to, be able to listen to your birth stories and, very moved and scared for you the whole time you were talking. I was like...
Thank you so much for having me. I've loved being on. I've loved sharing my experiences, and I just hope that anyone that listens takes away that though they were exciting experiences, to say the least, they really, at the end of the day, we take lessons, I guess, from everything, and they're definitely experiences that I'll forever remember. And I felt like it was the best workout of my life.
And you were working out till 38 weeks, so we would know.
Oh, thank you so much, Lucy.
Thank you so much, Maya.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Real Mummy podcast. Remember, every mum's journey is unique and you are doing an amazing job. Please be sure to head over to our website at www.realmummypodcast.com to stay up to date with the latest episodes and dive into our recent blog articles filled with even more wisdom and stories. We absolutely love connecting with our listeners, so don't forget to follow us on social media. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter at Real Mummy Podcast. Join the conversation, share your thoughts and become part of our supportive mum community. And I'd love to hear from you. Have you got a topic you want covered? Do you have a guest you'd love to hear from? Reach out to us through our website or social media. Your input is invaluable and helps us to create the content that matters most to you. Thank you for being part of the Real Mummy podcast family. Until next time, stay strong, stay kind to yourself, and remember, you're never alone on this journey. You've got this.